Today, I'm going to take you into my pantry and show you how I handle my short-term food supply. Let's go. Hey Provident Preppers, I'm Kylene. And in today's video, we are gonna take a trip into my pantry. Now this video is in response to one of our viewers, Aaron3131, who wanted to know how I handle my short-term food supply. What a great question. Now, some of the things that I do are going to be very unique because we eat pretty much a whole foods diet in our home. And so a lot of our diet has to be rotated out very frequently, like the nuts and the seeds. And so I found something that works for me and you can apply it to you. Now, I have what I think is a very small pantry, but actually it's pretty huge compared to what a lot of people have. But for me, having 11 children, it definitely wasn't big enough to take care of all of our needs. And so I had to look for different ways to get creative. Now, this idea I copied from a very dear friend who is amazing when it comes to household organization. She took racks and put them on her door and then has these plastic containers with the food in it, so that now I've suddenly got a whole lot more space just right here in the door. You'll notice in my pantry, a lot of things are labeled, but I don't have these labeled for a couple of reasons. One, pretty much I know what's inside here just by looking, which makes it very convenient. But a lot of times when I go downstairs where I keep like my backup bags of nuts, that bag will fill up 1.5 of these. And so I always want to make sure that I wash these really well when I'm rotating, even though it's the same thing going in. Even a teeny bit of rancidity that's left in the bottom can promote rancidity throughout it. And so with nuts and seeds, we want to make sure that we just clean it and dry it really well before we put in the new ones. But here you're able to see I have a ton of food. These are all nuts and seeds, which are short-term, except for like the chocolate. We've got to have my chocolate chips, but I strategically place them above eye level so that I would look at them every time I come in the pantry. The thing that I want the grandkids to snack on is actually on the lower shelves down here. So this is one way that we've developed that can just add an awful lot of room when you're really tight on space. Now I want to take you actually to the pride and joy of my pantry. And I've done the same thing on the side of these shelves, but this is where I store all my spices, and there are more over here because this way I've got really quick access to them. I can see exactly what I have. I used to have it on the shelf, but there were so many layers deep and it was so hard to find the spices. So this was a really good, inexpensive solution to have a lot of spices. When you're cooking mostly from scratch, you will find that you need a lot more spices to make things not only palatable, but spices also help it taste amazing, but it also increases the nutritional profile. Spices are amazing that way, so I do have a lot of spices. Now, right when you enter the pantry, I've got the spices here, but here I have our grain mill where I can just open this up. I reach down here, get some wheat out, put in there, close the door, open up this drawer, and that's how I access my wheat. Makes it super easy to be able to grind wheat, make it into flour, and use it, because I've found personally that the more steps you have to be able to do something, sometimes it prevents me from doing it. Now this is covered with a bag so that it doesn't get dirty, but this is our hand grinder. It's all set up so it would be really easy to use it, but I don't use it on a daily basis at all. But for me, having it here means that when something does happen, it's one less thing that I have to worry about. We're all set up and we're ready to go. Now, with the grain grinder or the grain mill, I keep both the hard red wheat and the white wheat, and then kamut down here because I really like kamut. Now, many of you know that I have an issue with gluten, and so I also have another mill which I have to get out and it takes longer, it takes more work, so I don't do it as often, but where I can grind some alternative flours and it's not contaminated by the wheat that has been in here. Now, along with my pantry, for my short-term food supply, I absolutely include what is in my freezer. We keep it stocked with all kinds of different fruits and vegetables. And then we have a lot of these homemade meals. When Jonathan and I cook, we make a regular size meal and then we eat whatever it is we're gonna eat, and then all of the leftovers we package just like this, because this is a good serving size. You take it out, it takes about 4 minutes to heat it up, and so instead of going out and doing fast food or anything like that when we're tired, we have all kinds of good meals, and we don't have to cook every day, even though we're cooking everything from scratch and eating this whole foods diet. So this I totally count in my short-term food supply. And in order to do that, we make sure that we have a backup power supply so that if anything happens, we don't lose it all, because that's a lot of food in here. This is my basement storeroom, and this is how I store my nuts and my seeds short-term. Now, granted, you could repackage them, but because they're short-term, it just doesn't make any sense for me to do that. I leave them in the original packaging. We'll go through these within a year or two, and it's all stored in the nice cool basement. I put them in these containers because it protects them from any moisture that's down here. It keeps them organized. I know exactly what I have. You can see the dates are on them, and it works out really well for me. This is my trophy room, and a huge asset in our short-term food supply. This is what allows us to make it from one season to another. So we grow a lot of our own food and we bottle it. This happens to be some raisins that we dried in 2024. So we get to enjoy this all winter long until the next crop comes. And I think that that's a really important thing, but this is not a long-term food supply. This is just my short-term food supply. And I think it's a really important part, especially for us, because it makes us so much more self-reliant. While it looks like we have a lot in here right now, by the time it's fall and we're harvesting again, this is significantly dwindled, and it's time to restock it. And there you have it. There is our short-term food supply. It's super important that we keep it rotated. Short-term foods aren't meant to be stored for 30 years, and you're not going to have good results if you do. Usually we can gauge like a year, right? That's kind of our goal, is to have a year supply of the foods that we eat every day. And it's nice. It can, it ebbs and flows. It can go into a year and a half, or it can go, to 8 months or whatever. But that's what our target is, to have a year's supply of the foods that we normally eat. It's important to make sure that you're only storing the foods that you eat. Somebody else would look at all those nuts that we have down there and think we're nuts. Which, okay, we're nuts. But that is a huge mainstay in our diet. You can see how much granola we make for John, and nuts and seeds are just part of our diet. So for you, it might not be like that. Just store whatever it is that you eat so that you make sure that you have the food you need when you need it. Packaging it appropriately is also really important, because you might think you're never going to get like a pantry moth or mice or something in your food storage, but it happens a lot easier than you might think. So taking some extra precaution, whether it's using these containers that you buy, or just, you'll notice a lot of the containers that I've used are ones that we bought at Costco and they had something else in it. And we've just repurposed those containers, and that works really well. In some of our videos, we've talked about how to store things in peat bottles. This is popcorn that we've stored in a peat bottle, and it's amazing how long it will last if you store it appropriately. You don't have to spend a lot of money. It's nice when you can do the fun things, but the most important thing is that you store food. So short-term food storage, we're not aiming for it to last longer than about 5 years. Some of it will, but the optimal health and nutrition comes when we consume it in a timely manner. And then long-term food storage are those things that can sit on your shelf and be okay 30 years from now. The wheat that we have down here, it can be 30 years old and it can still be just fine. However, if these nuts were 30 years old, they're not even going to be safe to eat anymore. So my challenge to you today is to think about your short-term food storage. What are you doing to make sure that if you couldn't go to the store for 3 months, your family can still eat? In fact, if you click the card in the corner, it will take you to a link where we did that as a family. When we still had 4 of our children at home, we did not go out to eat or go to the grocery store for 3 months. And in that challenge, you'll see some of the issues that we had and some of the things that we learned. It was a great experience for us. But that's one of the things that your short-term food supply is supposed to do for you, to make it so that you can go for several months without going to the grocery store, and your family's still going to be okay, and you're still going to be able to eat mostly the kinds of foods that you would normally eat. For the question of the day, what is the number one item that you want to make sure you have in your short-term food supply? And how are you storing it? Comment below. And thanks for being part of the solution.